Colonel Sanders had such an interesting life, and the more I researched him, the more respect I garnered towards this iconic symbol in fast food. And I'm making my way towards a house that he actually resided in the last 15 years of his life. He moved to Canada in 1965 with his wife, his second wife, Claudia. And Colonel Sanders had a very tough start to his life, born in 1890. In Henryville, Indiana. His father passed away when he was just 5 years old. And at that time, his mother had to work such that Harlan David Sanders had to raise his two younger siblings. He was the oldest of 3 children, and that is where he started cooking. And his mother got remarried a few times after his father passed away, and he had a very toxic relationship with his stepfathers. So when Colonel Sanders was 12 years old, he left home to work on a farm. And then when he was 13 years old, he was painting horse carriages. This is quite a modest area in the Lakeside View neighborhood in Missisauga. And quite a modest neighborhood for someone with such an iconic stature. When Colonel Sanders was 16 years old, he resided with his uncle, and his uncle worked at a streetcar company. And was able to get Harlan a job as a streetcar conductor. But when the war broke out, Colonel Sanders altered his birth certificate such that he could participate in the war. And I've arrived at Sydney and Mountain Drive. And Mountain Drive is where Colonel Sanders resided for the last 15 years of his life, on this very modest street in Missisauga. And he resided at 1337 Mountain Drive. And Colonel Sanders was known to be hot-tempered, combative at times, but He never gave up, guys. In 1930 is where the Kentucky Fried Chicken had its origin in North Corbin, Kentucky. Colonel Sanders was managing a Shell service station. I think that's the house there. And this house went on sale, the one that Colonel Sanders resided in, this month. And it was going for a little under $1.5 million. And it's already sold. So in 1930, Colonel Sanders was managing a Shell service station, and that's where he decided to start a restaurant. And he also developed his secret recipe, 11 herbs and spices. As well as patenting a way of cooking chicken in a pressurized fryer. But it was not without its challenges, and it was during the Great Depression. And when Colonel Sanders was working at the gas station, a fellow competitor, Matt Stewart, who was running a gas station in the same North Colburn neighborhood, took issue with the fact that the highway signs were pointing towards Colonel Sanders' gas station, such that he went to the gas station, a very quiet neighborhood here. Stewart went to the gas station, guns a-blazing, and he shot one of the employees of Colonel Sanders at the Shell Canada gas station, subsequently killing him. But it was a shootout. In which Colonel Sanders and his employees took part. And Stewart was eventually arrested and convicted of murder. So that was the origin of the KFC and the recipe. This house in front of me here has changed since Colonel Sanders lived here. It is now a 4-side split-level bungalow with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2 laundry rooms, and plenty of living room. Colonel Sanders did study law, and he did practice law, although he did not pass the bar exam. And unfortunately, due to his hot temper, he was eventually disbarred from practicing. And that created a career change for him. And the reason he was disbarred was he physically attacked his client in the courtroom. And when Colonel Sanders was 65 years old, he finally got his big break. And his big break was somebody bought the secret recipe and his cooking style. And Colonel Sanders had worked hard trying to get people to buy his recipe. Lots of trees on this property. Just gorgeous. Colonel Sanders had only his car. Let's have a look around this neighborhood. So when Colonel Sanders was 65, he only had his car. He was traveling around America trying to sell his secret recipe and his patented pressurized fryer for cooking his chicken, the way he cooked his chicken. So he's traveling around America trying to sell his recipe, and he was not successful. He was told over 1,000 times that his idea would never be successful. He was living off of a $105 Social Security pension, and he was broke. And then he came upon the restaurant run by Pete Harmon. And Pete Harmon was his 1,010th attempt to make money off of his secret recipe. 11 herbs and spices. And prior to Pete Hartman buying the rights to use the recipe, Colonel Sanders was offering the secret recipe to restaurants that would take his recipe on for free. So long as they gave him royalty to the tune of 4 cents for every piece of chicken that was sold in the restaurant. And Pete Harmon was actually the creator of the bucket of chicken. And he was the one who coined the term Kentucky Fried Chicken. Very picturesque neighborhood. Obviously no sidewalks, but lots of greenery. beautiful, beautiful neighborhood. And that first Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise opened up in South Salt Lake, Utah, run by the franchisee Pete Harmon, who then became a friend of Colonel Sanders. In 1952, the first Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant opened up. And eventually, the Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants grew to 600 fast food Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants in the United States. And at the age of 72, Colonel Sanders felt that he was taking on too much, that it had become a lot of work for him, and he decided to sell the restaurant to investors, and they paid him $2 million for the Kentucky Fried Chicken establishments in the United States, but he held on to his Canadian franchises, and at 75 moved with his wife Claudia here on Melton Drive in Lakeside View area in Missisauga, which is just west of the city of Toronto. There's no one in the house, living in the house yet, guys. But I'm shocked that it is sold, because it went on sale in the first week of June, and I'm recording this on July 3rd, 2026. So Colonel Sanders kept the rights to the Canadian franchises, and he so loved Canada. In fact, he was so tickled pink with the way they were trying to cut costs in the United States after the investor sold his company, the US area of his company, to the tune of $280 million. So he got $2 million when he sold it, and 7 years later it was sold for over $280 million. That's a hard pill to swallow, guys. That would be a hard pill to swallow. Nonetheless, he would travel in the United States. He would even bring reporters with him to slam the cost-cutting recipe measures that were taking place in the United States for the restaurants there. And he even went as far as to, on camera, tell reporters that it was slop. He wouldn't feed the chicken to his dogs. Can't really see inside. He wouldn't even feed the chicken to his dogs, and he said that the gravy tasted like wallpaper paste. So subsequently, the U.S. Kentucky Fried Chicken Company sued Colonel Sanders for slander, but he did not care. Slop was slop, but he did keep the quality of his chicken and the secret recipe here in Canada to his standards. And Colonel Sanders was known to walk around this neighborhood at times with his wife Claudia. In 1980, Colonel Sanders passed away of acute leukemia in his home country in Kentucky. And Colonel Sanders was well known in Canada for his philanthropy. He donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to a number of charities and the Missisauga Hospital, such that they named a wing in his honor. I think it was the family unit that was named in his honor. And what a life for Harlan David Sanders.